but I'm expecting a few other folks to show up, so hopefully they'll be here soon. And I might have to actually have my phone near me just in case they're having trouble getting in. It does look like I missed a call, so hopefully that was Mayan though, and now she knows how to get in. So welcome to week 3. What I was hoping we could do before we really get started with what we were supposed to do today was go over Moodle. Now that we have our learning management system, want to make sure that you're all comfortable with it so that moving forward things can go smoothly. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I believe this is going. Yes, okay. So, and I'll log out just so that you can see the full process. Has anybody had a chance to look at this Moodle course yet? You could.
I got online briefly today. Yeah.
Oh,
I only
okay,
had 3 minutes, so I checked it out.
Great.
Yeah, I was able to get in there. It's really cool.
I did too.
It's easy to use.
Very good. So I'm glad even just a few minutes, at least you're a little acclimated. And I'll show you more specifics now. So when you get to the home page, this is what it looks like, as you probably know. And then when you log in, this is what you'll see. You see your the course that you're enrolled in. There's only one course here so far. And since I started building this in one place and then had to move it, and the move wasn't as easy as it should have been, I only got as far as populating the first 3 weeks. And tonight I'll finish putting in the assignment links into week 3. But I should have everything in here, at least for the first 6 weeks, relatively soon, so you can start to at least see what you're going to be doing and what to expect. But even if I don't have that up, I just want to remind you that you should have access to your syllabus. It's in a Dropbox folder along with the materials associated with the first few weeks of class. And so you can always look there to see what's going on. And I'm going to try to keep that up to date. So what I mean by that is, for example, when we get to week 3 here, I added in this Moodle overview just now to the course shell because that's something we're going to be doing. And then I will plan to update the syllabus document that's in that folder. So at any point, you might just want to go there to see what's going on. But regarding Moodle, just to make sure that we are all on the same page, on the left-hand side here, you see your navigation. And so the areas that are going to be important to you is going to be this current course. If you click here, you get to see the different weeks that are available to you right now. And then if you were to click on one of these weeks, you could see the links to all the different assignments or resources available. So for example, this Pillars of Success presentation, that's a resource. It's not an assignment, because if you've gone through it before, it's not like you're being graded on it. But you could click on that and then you see the resource, and you're able to download if you wish to keep it. So I'll just use my highlighter to show you. Here's the download or the print button. With some resources like this, you'll notice that it populated right into the tab that we were looking at for the LMS. So you have to do your back button to get back to the LMS. I try not to do that whenever possible, but usually it lets you open in a new tab. Gary, did you have a question?
Yes. Are you going to have the syllabus be a resource on this site also?
So I do plan to have all the resources on this site, except for perhaps the video archives, just because the files are too big. But yeah, the plan is to have all of that in here. It's a little slow going since it took a little bit of time just to rebuild this, but it should be here. And there is a section called announcements, which once we have an announcement, it should appear right here and or right over there. And then you'll be able to see that, oh, there's the syllabus is available. It also will be emailed to you whenever there's an announcement or a message from me. So
Okay.
here you could see the participant list, which has everybody who's in the class. Gary, thank you for putting in a picture, and you could also put in some personal information if you would like. You can also update your information by clicking on your name here, and you could edit your profile or other things. For those of you who are earning a badge, so you're auditing, you're not getting a certificate, but you'd still like acknowledgement that you were here, you will be able to earn a badge, and that would appear here, and that's something you could put in like your signature, for example, in your emails, just showing that you participate in this course. And then of course certificate people will have one that says they have a certificate in this course. And then like I was saying, when you click on any of these links, if there's material in that week, then it all shows up right here. But otherwise, you can go to where it says BJE OHEL, that's the name of your class, and you get to see everything right here, and you could scroll down from one week to the next. And each week I'm gonna put the agenda, the homework listed, and then you get the homework listed again, but these are highlighted links. I might, if this looks irrelevant after a while, I might remove this and just put these links. And sometimes when there's more information, you'll see that right below. So this week 1 video archive, here's the information associated with that. I don't do that too much because I don't want it to be too cluttered here. What you'll find more often is just a link with no information, and then when you click on it, that's where you're going to get the explanation. So here's the game interview. This is the assignment y'all did for week 1. And then I put in, for people who submitted ahead of time and just emailed it to me, I put in your submissions here. And then I also went into TED Ed to pull out your comments because I wanted to make sure that all of your work that you did was here already. And now when you're ready to do so, you can read someone's what they've shared, their post, and then you could see what comments people put after that, and then you can also comment, and you could do so by, so here's the main post, here's Alicia's, and you could reply to hers, and then write your comments there, and then you'll notice that when I post to the forum, it kind of indents a little bit to show these are all responses to Alicia's. But now if I wanted to reply to Amy, and these are not ideal responses because they don't really say much, but I just want to show you how this functions. Don't use this as a model for what your responses should look like. Here's where you could see it's indented a little further to show that this is a response to Amy. And I could make it even clearer by using the subject line here. So you'll notice I didn't change the subject line. And so it says Amy Rips, Settlers of Catan. Is that how you pronounce it? Catan?
Mm-hmm.
Like small Catan? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you know that I'm responding to Amy. But if I didn't put that, if nobody put in this information in the front and it was just Settlers of Catan, it's hard to know who I'm replying to or what I'm replying to, and everyone's reply looks the same. So it's really great if you can put something in here that makes it obvious what and who you're replying to. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So in terms of adding your own post and, oops, actually, let me go back the other way. In terms of adding your own comments and your own posts, I'll go into this one now. Oftentimes you could add a new discussion topic. So in some cases, if I want you each to share something different, then I'm gonna give you the option to add a new discussion topic. And then you could do that, and again, give a very clear name for what you're sharing, and then you fill in your message here. You could use this to add a picture, and then you hit submit at the bottom, or post a form at the bottom. But if I want to respond to somebody else, then I click on their discussion. And then this is where, ooh, nice. This is where I would hit reply. And now I'm replying to what Debbie submitted. Okay? There are going to be some forums where you won't have the option to create your own discussion topic. And that's because it doesn't make sense in that case. It would be messy. So if I ask you, what are your assumptions about teaching online? We're all talking about our assumptions and replying to each other. I might just have one topic, one question, and you're all just replying there, as opposed to letting each of you start your own topic. Any questions about what you've seen so far?
Stephanie, I have a question. So if you want to, for example, in a class with the students, if you want to reply just to one student because let's say he did, you know, a mediocre job and you don't want to embarrass him, or so can you reply to one person without everybody seeing the rest of the comments? I mean, your comment?
Yes. So as the teacher, you do want to be sensitive to what we call netiquette, which is your etiquette on the internet. That involves how your students are talking to each other, whether it's through a learning management system like this or through the chat that we have available to us in Zoom, and other programs have chats like that as well. So you want to make sure they're speaking to each other properly and they're doing the work meeting your expectations. But then you also want to make sure that if they're not meeting expectations, you're having that conversation privately. So in my classes, that might be an email with the parents, just letting them know what's going on and seeing if you could talk to your child, asking them to maybe meet with me or have the child meet with me at a different time when not everyone's present, coming early or staying late to class. And it's really important that you make clear what your expectations are at the very beginning. Now, one thing that's kind of cool about learning management systems like Moodle, like this, I haven't put them in yet, but you could create rubrics if you're the kind of school where you do want to give grades, or even if you don't, but you just want to make it really clear what your expectations are, then you could provide rubrics for your students. And what that does is it just gives them a measurement of their progress. So I'm going to share a rubric with you just to make sure we're all on the same page of what that could look like. Let's see. Okay, so here's the rubric for our class.
We don't see you.
I'm sorry, I'm just pulling it up now. So here's the rubric for our class in terms of responding to discussions. And what you see is a description of what I consider to be satisfactory, and this is what you need to do in order to pass for an assignment.
Why I don't see you? I hear you, but I don't see you. It's my own. I see. Host your own Zoom meeting. This is what came up.
I'm sorry, what did you say you see?
It came host your own Zoom meeting.
Okay, you might do you have a PC or a Mac?
I have a PC.
So you might want to hit Alt-Tab. You might have gone to a different screen and you just need to get back to our screen. So.
Okay, yeah. Where did they go? What did they do? I didn't touch it.
You may have just gone to a different screen, you know, a different program, a different window. And then if you minimize all those, you'll probably get back to our screen. If you hit Alt-Tab, you could probably find it amongst the different.
Yeah, now I can. Yeah, now I can see, but I didn't see how you got there.
How I got to showing you this screen?
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, it's an option that I have. You have it as well. But if I want to share a screen, I hit share screen. You have the button as well. But since I'm the administrator, I could share my screen anytime, and you can only share when no one else is sharing. So, and afterwards, if you're interested, if you want to stay after, I could show you how you could do that. But anyhow, so this is just an example of a rubric, and it's showing you, here's what we're judging, the content, and how do you know if you're doing well? Here's satisfactory, and here's what needs improvement looks like. And in this course, because it's pass-fail, and because I have my expectations, and you either hit them or you keep working until you do hit them, that's why all I have are these two columns of choices, but most rubrics, and this is what you would probably see with your students if you decided that you wanted to do something like this. It's very cool in Moodle how, and other learning management systems, how you can grade easily in a case like this. Oh, you know what? I don't have my, never mind. I'll put it into our folder of resources, or I'll put it into Moodle so you can see what some rubrics look like, because I realize I only have the ones that I'm using right now, not the other ones in this folder. So I don't want to take your time away. But that just gives you a sense of how you could express your expectations in writing, or using the systems. But of course, a conversation with the child when no one else is around is probably one of the best things. I'm going to bring the screen back to share Moodle and just see if there were any other questions right now about any of this. So do you all feel comfortable getting into Moodle and then finding where your assignments are?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So when are we going, how do we know when to use your discussion versus when to use our blog? I've been putting things on the blog, but now I'm rethinking about maybe some of that should have gone in discussion.
So so this blog, course blog?
Yes, well, maybe it's under me. I don't know.
Okay, well, I'll have to look at that. Maybe I just need to remove that feature so it's not confusing. But everything you do is linked right here in your list of assignments. So if you can't get to it from clicking either on these features on the left under navigation or right here from the very center, then it's not something you need to be doing. You only need to do things here.
Where do you think my blog went? I hope it didn't disappear.
Cyberspace.
I'm sure it didn't. However, I'm logged in here as a student because I wanted to show you something that looked exactly like what you're going to see. So if it's not something public, then I can't see it.
Well, I said publish to anyone, so shouldn't everyone be able to see it?
I'll have to look into it, into that specific feature, because I haven't used that before with Moodle specifically. I've used it with Blackboard. But just so the rest of you know, and well, all of your assignments are linked right here. And so up here, I list everything you should be doing. And then if there's a link associated with that assignment, then you'll see it right below. So for example, here, there's nothing for number 2 because there's nothing actually due this week for number 2. It's just I wanted you to get started with this assignment. And then once it's actually due, then I'm going to have that link to where you would submit that assignment. Does that make sense? If there's any confusion, don't be afraid to call or email or whatever. But yeah, you see your full list of homework here, and then you see anything that requires a link, you see it right below. Okay, well.
I have a question, Stephanie.
Sure.
So if I want to teach a class, so what do I use Zoom with, let's say, right? I will use Zoom, and then how do I create, do I have to be like the administrator of a Moodle? In other words, I open a Moodle for my class, or I use the BJE. I'm sorry if I not even know if I'm asking the right question, but I'm trying to understand, like, what am I going to use if I'm the administrator? In other words, I'm the teacher, right? So what am I using?
So I'm glad you're asking that, because that's a perfect segue into the next part of what we're doing. So I'm going to do a new share in just a moment. I just saw someone chat. So Justin was hoping to see the back end of this page, and we won't have time to do that during our hour together. But Justin, if you or anybody else wants to see what this looks like from an administrator perspective, I'm happy to do that outside of the class time, because the focus of the class being for teaching kids, and I don't recommend using this for children. So we don't want to take class time for that, but I'm absolutely happy to show you. So what I'm going to do right now is bring back this whiteboard. And I'd like us to go over the considerations for the first day of class. And so what you would do the first day and even the second day. Before we get started on that, though, I'd like to answer Alicia's question a little bit more because that lends itself to this discussion. The very first day of class is going to be focused on making sure everyone can use the technology, creating expectations, getting the kids to bond. If there's no actual learning of your subject matter, that's okay. It depends how long you have to work with your students. You may not have time for that the very first day. The second day will be going more into the technology and expectations and the bonding. But hopefully you have less time allocated towards technology troubles, etc., which frees up time for the learning. Now, in terms of what you need as a teacher, that really depends on you, how you teach, your style, and also the age of your students. So most of you teach kids under the age of bar mitzvah, and if that's the case, I do not recommend you using a learning management system like Moodle. That's not for that age. That's for older kids or kids that are more self-sufficient. You might have younger kids that you're tutoring one-on-one, and that particular child might show the maturity to be able to log in to Moodle and check their assignments and do things on their own like that. But a lot of kids don't have that kind of self-discipline. So really just meeting at this time, whatever time you schedule, using Zoom or a similar technology, that's the only technology that I think you have to use. Beyond that, we're going to be learning about different technologies over the next few weeks, additional ones that you can incorporate. And we're also going to be looking at and websites and things like that that you can be using. You might also want to have a tablet. So for teaching Hebrew, it's really important to me that the students have a tablet device or an iPad because it helps me with teaching them how to practice their writing. You know, obviously they can read anything off the main screen, but in terms of practicing writing, it's really hard unless they can use a stylus, which looks like a pen. And, you know, using a mouse just doesn't cut it, or a touchpad. So if you're teaching Judaic studies, you might not need it. But there are some apps on tablets and iPads that are just so great for other things besides just teaching writing. And one of those is something we're going to cover, I think in 2 weeks, Nearpod, which basically has opportunities for the students to do multiple choice and circling, you know, you might have a picture, they could circle different things on the picture. Maybe you have a whole bunch of Judaica, and you could ask them to circle all the things that you on Shabbat or Hanukkah or Rosh Hashanah. That was one of the activities I was thinking of doing, but I don't think, given that we had to cover Moodle today, I don't know that we'll have time to actually do it. But, you know, if you did have pictures of Judaica or of holiday-related items, you know, letting the kids find them and circle them, those are the kinds of things you could do with some of these apps, and every single kid is involved and is active, and you get to see the results of what they're doing. But you don't have to wait for every single kid to do it one by one by one. Everyone's doing it at the same time and not wasting each other's time, I guess you could say. Gary, did you have a question?
Yes. Do Zoom and Moodle both have extensible language support so that your text box options will support Hebrew?
So Moodle does, and in fact, when I created it the first time, I put that the student can choose their default language, so it even will translate some of the sections. I don't think I remember to do it this time. I could try to remember, but I'd rather get the core stuff in first. Zoom, I actually was on a chat with someone today and realized I think I dropped the ball on that. I was asking them if that was something you could do. I know it's definitely, if they don't have it ready right now, it's in the pipelines, because I've asked them about that last year, and they said that's something they're planning to have, but they're working towards it. Any other questions about anything we've covered so far?
Yes, Mayan. I was in a seminar that introduced me to Seesaw. What is the difference? What the advantage of using the Moodle and the Zoom versus the Seesaw?
Well, I'm not familiar with Seesaw, so it's hard for me to say, but does Seesaw, is that supposed to do some of the same things?
Yeah, it's the communication between the teacher and the student to give homework. They can record themselves. They can write assignment on. You know, I see my kids only once a week, so they have a whole week to practice Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking for ways for them to communicate with me during the week.
Yes. So I can't say the pros and cons of Seesaw since I don't really know. But if it does a lot of the things that these technologies do, then I think it sounds pretty great. One thing might be the cost or the number of students or the amount of time you could spend. So Moodle is free. However, you do have to probably pay somebody to set it up because it is involving to set up a Moodle course shell. But once it's set up, it's not that hard for a teacher to learn how to use it. But you probably will want, like Blackboard is paid and it's very expensive. And it has even more features, I think, than Moodle. But Moodle has just plenty. But again, in either case, you would need to have somebody either on staff that knows how to administer it and manage it, or hire someone outside, like a contractor, whenever you need help. So Alicia, to answer your question, are you the administrator? It really depends school by school on what they expect you to know and be responsible for. In my case, and probably in most of your cases, just because this is so new, you are probably going to be everything. I would talk to your IT people if you have IT people and ask them the degree to which they can help you maybe set up a Zoom account, or we're going to actually set up Zoom accounts in class in a week or two. But, you know, being able to do things with Zoom, be outside of this class, you might want to have Moodle if you're working with high school kids or adults. And maybe your IT person can set it up for you, save you some money. If not, then you will want to find someone who could set it up and get it all ready. And then you could learn how to use it. And like I said, if there's ever a time some of you want to get together and look at Moodle, the back end, we could do that. So now oh, you're welcome. So with thinking about the past couple of weeks, because you've been students, not teachers, think about some of the things we've gone through. We've covered some of the aches and pains of the past couple of weeks, not knowing which technology we're using, etc. And if you could start making lists right here on the board, and just to remind you, hover over the top or the bottom of your screen to find the features bar, the different icons. You might have to hit more to find annotate. But once you click on annotate, you should get another bar come up. And that bar, oh, great. Farah was able to write in Hebrew in the chat. Awesome. So I guess it works. Anyway, so if you get that bar up, you could use the text feature, or you could use the draw feature to write down some of your ideas in the appropriate columns. We'll take a minute or two. We'll take a few minutes to do that. And just so you know, if you end up writing at the same place as someone else and it's overlapping, you can't move what they wrote, but you can move what you wrote by using the select button and then just clicking and dragging it somewhere else. So for example, whoever wrote the part under expectations in blue can use the select button from the annotate bar to click on that, whatever they just wrote, drag it somewhere else.
I don't see the select button yet.
Okay, so if you have the, do you see the annotate bar with
Yeah.
all the options?
I'm on the annotate bar.
Oh, okay, and there's
Mouse
no
text,
select.
draw arrow. I don't see select.
Oh, you know
Right.
what? That might be, okay, I see. That might be because you're not the administrator. So sorry about that. I just moved it for you.
Thank
What
you.
could do, you're welcome. What you could do is you can always hit the undo button or the erase button. Use the eraser to erase something if you need, or the undo to undo it. Okay, if once you feel you've put everything down that you could share, if you would use the hand raising tool, and if you don't remember how to do that, let's see if I can remember. I believe it's under participant. If you click on participants, you'll see yourself, and you could click somewhere near your name to raise your hand. That's the one other thing I'm not crazy about with this, with Zoom, but then again, I think it's kind of the same with most of them, is that the administrator panel is different, so it's hard for me to tell you exactly where to find your features, but. Oh, and just to, as a follow-up from last week, I was using 2 screens and we were having some issues with the whiteboard because of it. And what I realized, because I've used 2 screens many times and it's always been just fine, even 3 screens. And what I realized is I was using my aunt's extra screen and it's very old. And so just the fact that the technology is older, or if it's not as great, although hers is a Dell, so it really should have been good. Sometimes there could be some of those issues. So this, whoever put practice tech in advance, very, very important. Because as you saw, even though I've practiced with 2 screens before, I still was surprised by the fact that this screen didn't work the way that my other screens worked. Okay, so I'm going to give you another minute or so to finish up. A couple of you have already put down all the ideas that you've thought of. So those of you who are still writing, I want to give you a couple minutes to do that. But in the interim, those of you who are not writing, check out what people have written so that we could discuss it in a moment. And whoever wrote
Okay, remind me where the hands up button is.
Oh, okay. So I believe if you hover
Remind me where the hands up.
Yes, so I believe if you hover over the features bar and then you click on participants, that you should be able to see hands up next to your name somewhere. Does that sound right?
It's actually, I found it on underneath all the names, sort of a bottom bar in that box of participants. There was a mute me or a lower,
Yeah.
raise your lower hand.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Also, if anyone like me had the like
Oh,
four
I got it.
videos on the right of the screen, I just shifted it to see a little bit more under learning and saw that there was the whole bonding category that I didn't see before because our videos were covering that part of the whiteboard.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
had to move the videos around to find the things. Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, your default is that your videos will be on the right, but if you click and drag them, you can move them to the top or to the side and kind of get them out of the way. And your kids will need to be reminded that they could do that too. Okay, let's see. So, looks like we're almost ready. So I'm going to start reading through them myself a little bit more. And if the rest of you could also, and then in just a minute or less, we'll just start talking about them. So looking at the technology column, let's discuss that one for a few minutes. And then what I'd like to do is after this, you know, part of the resources I'm going to send you will be a checklist of things, considerations teachers have before teaching online. And it's very expensive, excuse me, and it's not written for you as online Hebrew school teachers. It's written for like college teachers who are teaching online courses where they might never encounter their students in a live setting like this. They might, but might not. So it's going to have a lot more than you need. But I do want to share that with you so you could at least see some of the things that they would put on their list. And then not as a graded assignment, but as a bonus assignment, if you would like to do it, you know, just sort of check off, copy and paste the ones that are important to you to create your own list, a checklist of things to think about before you start teaching online. And if you decide to do that, that's great. And we could all share them with each other and then together put those into one big list that we could share with everybody in this class. So someone wrote, need to help children not be frustrated as I was, which is definitely important. And that's one of the things that I really wish could have been different with this class. The first couple of weeks are just critical. You know, that's where people could decide like, oh, this is too much for me. This is too hard and I don't want to do it, or this is no fun. You know, this is where you could make or break the situation for people. And I'm so happy that you stuck with it. But this was a particularly bumpy road that we were on. And so to avoid that, what are some of the things you could do to help your kids not be as frustrated?
Have like written step-by-step instructions for the things, especially for the things we have to do outside of class.
Yeah.
To not have to like search for help, like for where things are online, to have them as consolidated as possible and like easy to follow instructions that they can go to.
Yes. All in one place. Someone wrote something similar to that, but I'm just restating it a little bit here. Yeah, and have everything pre-written, right? So one thing, and you can use the same content that I sent to you the first day. I took what I sent to you, which said like the step-by-step how to get into Zoom. I took that from what I send to the parents and the students that I teach. And then in there somewhere, I asked them to try it out before the first day of class so that if there are problems, I could meet with them, you know, maybe one-on-one, spend 5 or 10 minutes so we could troubleshoot it. I've only had to, in the 4 years that I've done this, I've only had to meet someone like once to do that, because just having the really clear steps, instructions, was enough for most people to be able to get through it. And then the very first day, we really didn't have any of those kinds of issues. Anything else? So we've got some great things here, practicing the tech in advance, you doing that on your own time with family or friends, you know, make sure things work. and then asking your students to practice in advance. Preparing in advance so that you're ready for delays. So yeah, if it is always nice, and we're going to get to in a week or two, plan B, always having a plan B. There might be a kid having a tech problem and you're trying to walk them through it, and what are all the other kids doing? So having something for those other kids to do that is self-managed, so that you can have those few minutes to talk the student through the tech problems is going to be really helpful. Now, one thing here, being afraid of running into technical difficulties, so that is a real concern. And it's going to be important for you to write a clear message to your parents so that they understand what's your responsibility and what's their responsibility. And being clear about what you feel comfortable doing in terms of technology as the teacher, the kind of troubleshooting you can do versus what they just have to figure out for themselves because they have different computers or different systems than you. I really feel like, because I feel tech savvy, I do walk my kids through things that other people might not feel comfortable troubleshooting. But that's also because I opened the door for doing that. If I didn't feel as comfortable, then I would require my students' parents, my students' parents come to the first class, at least for the beginning part. And I walk them through different things, show them where things are in Zoom, how to use it. If there's sound trouble, where to fix that. If there's video trouble, where to fix that. So that's going to be really important. And if I wasn't as comfortable with troubleshooting iPads and tablets and all these other things, then I would ask my parents, give them a list of the things the student needs to be able to do with that tool, and ask the parents to go through that with them, preferably before school even starts, but at least prior to that lesson where they might need it. Any other questions about technology prep? Okay. So expectations. And when I wrote that, initially I was thinking, like, what are the expectations that my expectations of the students? But expectations like the tech is working, that's also, clearly that's an important one. One thing that really helps is if you encourage your families to have Ethernet connection for their desktop or laptop computer, an actual cord, because a lot of people don't understand how Wi-Fi works, and they don't realize that if one kid is playing on the cell phone some games, and like another kid is on a different TV playing games using the Wi-Fi, then even if you have really, really fast Wi-Fi, it could be really slow for this class. So there are specific things like that where, and I could share that list with you. And in fact, I think it might be in the presentation, the Pillars of Success presentation. I'll double check. A list of things just to make sure that the technology is really where it needs to be and that everyone's on board. Yes, parents definitely need to be there to help the first day. And it's nice if there's a parent or adult in the house somewhere, because I did have one student who would come and his parents weren't home. And it wasn't usually an issue, but every once in a while he couldn't figure out how to get the audio working. And I couldn't explain it to him clearly enough for him to figure it out. And so for that whole session, he would just not really be able to participate effectively. I would explain that to his parents in an email afterwards. But that's one of those things in the pillars. The last one was buy-in. And that particular family, I didn't have very good buy-in. So they didn't really do anything about it. And that becomes an issue for the whole class. Raising your hand virtually is really important because right now I'm looking only at 4 people, and I see Amy has her hand up. And if anybody was raising their hand with their real hand and it's not one of the 4 people I'm looking at, I'd have no idea. And I did have a child one time who talked to her parents and felt left out of class because I wasn't calling on her when she was raising her hand. And that's because I didn't realize that she didn't know how to raise her hand virtually. Also knowing when to mute the mic. So I really personally prefer when people are not on mute so that they can speak up at any time, because sometimes they forget they're on mute and they say something and then we don't respond to it. But if a dog runs into the room or a sibling or something, they need to know how to use the mic and mute it in those occasions. Let's see. So yes, this is good. Yeah, thank you for adding that in, whoever did that. And so learning, I meant more like learning content than like names, but I'm glad you put that in because this is very important for the bonding aspect. So you do need to learn names. They need to learn each other's names. You could see on the video feed that people's names are there if they put them in. And that's also been a fun thing for my kids, at least, to put funny nicknames and whatever they want at that particular time. So we've got simple review of what did you study last year. This is always a great way to go. You know, whether you're teaching in person or online, start with something comfortable, something they've done before to get their feet wet, because you are trying to make this a comfortable learning environment. Orientation games to introduce users to the technology, great. So these two ideas kind of go together. And if you could do this, and so I'm hoping that you'll try to do this with your first day lesson plan, is to come up with some kind of a game or an activity that lets you know where they are in terms of their content knowledge, but at the same time lets them practice using the tools, whether it's their mouse, whether it's, I usually like to start with just Zoom, because if you bring in other technologies, I mean, I like to step those in slowly so that it's not too painful for people who are having trouble. So for the lesson plan, you could use other technologies if you'd like, but I would be perfectly satisfied, and I think it would be a great start if in your first class you came up with some kind of activity that involves Zoom, like the whiteboard with writing, or if there could be a website that you want to look at or pictures you want to look at, and they could use the draw feature. They could use that, or they could practice with text or highlighting things, or even just pointing things out with their little arrows, which is next to between draw and eraser. So I just noticed, let's see, someone commented in the chat. Okay, so yeah, so thank you, Justin, for mentioning Tiny Tab. And Justin wrote in the chat what Tiny Tab is, and it's a tablet-based application. And he thinks it's going into web-based that makes themes and soundboards, and it's also Israeli, so that's always a bonus. Definitely worth looking into. So we have an assignment coming up. It was going to be for like week 1 or 2, but I moved it later. But that might be one of the technologies you want to look into. The assignment is to research some apps and technologies that you could bring into the classroom experience. And so that might be one you want to research. I've seen, Justin showed it to me and uses it with his magnetic school thing that he has, so it's pretty cute. All right, anything else? Is there anything that I missed here that you want to bring up? Oh, so bonding. These are some great ideas for bonding. And that's one thing. I'm so glad that all of you got your video screens, your videos to work, because that's such a difference when you could see people's faces versus just, you know, a black box. Any questions about any of this right here?
So I'm sorry, Stephen, so do you require students to actually have like a face? I mean,
I do.
Okay.
I require them to have a video camera and audio. And if they don't, then they need, I mean, that's just, it's a requirement. So, and most new computers have both built in.
Well,
I mean, if you think about it, not to pick on Debbie, but I feel so much closer to you now that I see you, you know, and like, and there's enough light that I could see your face, and you know, versus before when it could have been anyone back there behind that black screen, and who knows if you were even there. You know, you could have been off somewhere else and the screen's on.
Oh, darn it.
Almost got away with it. And sometimes my kids have the video angled funny and it's just the top of their head. And to the degree that I can, I try to get them to fix that, you know, because again.
Yeah, I had to work to get that to be at the right angle. Yeah. It wants to cut you off.
It does. And it makes a difference in terms of how people bond together. So now taking these ideas that you see on the board, what would you do in terms of an outline for the first couple of days of school? Does anyone have any suggestions of what you would do?
Something similar to what you've done. That is, get us all to work on Zoom, get all the kids to be successful going in and video to Zoom, and then have them click on the most critical items. See if the annotation bar is going to work for each of them. Some of them may have troubles with their PCs or Macs or tablets or whatever, and just go through every single thing, technology step by step, to make sure that it's going to work for each student and spend the time necessary to do that. Or say that you really need a different webcam, yours is not working.
Great. I mean, that would be perfectly reasonable. And in terms of exploring some of these tools, coming up with, like we said, a game or activity is really helpful. For example, the fact that Rosh Hashanah is coming up, having each kid draw something that is related to Rosh Hashanah, or someone mentioned simple review. What did you study last year? Maybe drawing something or writing something having to do with what they did last year on this big board so that they could share it with each other. And maybe even if it's Hebrew and they understand Hebrew, maybe write it in Hebrew and see if they could each guess what someone wrote. Or if they don't know Hebrew, do what I've been doing, which is the Hebrew letters, but English words, and the kids sound it out and try to figure out, you know, what's written there, which they love, because to do it, you have to like speak with an Israeli accent. You know, you don't have like TH sounds, for example. So they have to try to figure out how would an Israeli say this? So then how would we spell it? Any other ideas of how you might want to start? Like, for example, as people log in, do you want to have something in particular up on your screen? Do you have something that you'd want to say to them, or once they're all figured out in terms of technology, what your first activity?
Well, I do like the idea of having something up on the screen for them to do while they're waiting for everybody to log in.
Okay, great. So yeah, and that's something you could do right with this whiteboard, as you see right here, putting the words up there on the board to start, or the instructions. And something else you could do, and I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment, and I'm going to share my other screen.
When you work with students, is it typically all on the computer, or have they ever had them have a workbook or a textbook or a binder in front of them as well?
So I actually have had them use textbooks there as well. Not that often, because everything that I've needed, you could actually get online, that I've needed for my classes. So, you know, we might practice reading prayer, and it's just as easy to have it on the screen pulled up. When I try to have them use their textbooks, it's like, oh yeah, let me go get it from my room. Like, even though I tell them I tell them the list of everything they need to have every class, they don't actually necessarily remember. And then taking the time to go get it, you know, is kind of a hassle. So I try to, if they all have the book right there, then fine. If they don't, then I have the page pulled up already on the computer for them to read there.
I'm thinking more like I've done so much, we're almost after the fact of like students create things, and then I put it up all over my classroom, or we'll reference it, or they put it in their binder. And I mean, if they get I can email them the PDF of their work and they can save it into a file, but it's not the same as kind of it being displayed.
Yeah, well, so are you thinking then that if they work on something in their textbook, that you'll get a copy of it and it could be on display somewhere later?
Well, more of like, so say like the whiteboard, if they all throw up something and they're like, if we're doing like the first day of class, like expectations, and they all throw up ideas of what they like behavior expectations or learning expectations on the board. That's something we then kind of turn into a poster and leave up all year. But it's something that you can kind of always have in the corner of your computer screen.
So, and actually I do like to do that. I often have them do homework and then display that homework on the screen for them. So, and they're proud of it. You know, they're like, oh, wait, make sure you know mine too. So, and that's one tricky thing is if you do have a bigger class, making sure that they all know that what they've done is important and special, but you may not have time to go over it all thoroughly. That's where the app Nearpod that I'm going to show you is going to be really helpful because it allows them to each do their own work, submit it, you get to see their own work, and you could scroll through them all quickly and show them all off to everyone or not show some of them. And then keep copies of it, screenshots of it. And then you could make like a slideshow or something. You know, even put a slideshow on the school website would be pretty cool since there's no real display board for a web-based class. What I'm showing you here is just a YouTube channel that I'm going to email you a link to for how to use Zoom. And it was just a website that I had pulled up. But the reason I'm doing that is because you could annotate this page as well, which I believe I've mentioned to you before. So if you found a website or a picture and you pulled the picture up on your screen and there was something relevant, you know, to your content, you could modify it with, you know, drawing on the screen, and your students can also participate in that. So that's another way to engage your students with the tools, but at the same time, bring up a resource that you might use frequently.
Stephanie, I have a question about that.
Sure.
So one of the things I'm thinking about is using some of the Berman House and Torah Ora materials that I use online. And I was thinking, well, like the Berman House has got a point and read. So if I pull that up on my screen, I can show it to them, but they can't click and, you know, they can't click on my screen, but they could annotate. So if I said circle which word, they can annotate that on my screen.
So actually, they could click on your screen.
They can.
If you let them. So I'll show you actually what we do. Now, one thing is you have to remember, I have to stop sharing and reshare. You have to remember to share when you click share screen and you choose the screen you're going to share, you have to remember on the bottom left, there's an option, share computer sound. You have to click on that if you want them to be able to hear the click and pray things. So here's just a vote. Oops. Flash is kind of going by the wayside, so you might get that warning, and you just have to click activate. Anyway, so.
Ata.
So did you hear it say ata?
Well, right, I heard it, but could I now click on that? And
Abraham.
So what you do is, as the administrator, actually, as whoever the person is that's sharing the screen, they could give remote access. So right now, there's a icon that says remote control, and I'm going to give it to Amy. And now, Amy, you just click your mouse button, and that gives you control of my mouse. And now you can move my mouse around, and you can be the person.
Chasadim.
oh, great, I did that. Okay.
So only one person can use it at a time?
Right. And then what I do.
Like you can call on someone.
Yeah, exactly. And I do that a lot. And what I do afterwards is I say, okay, so now don't move your mouse because I'm going to take back the control, which sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't. And now I could give it to Farah, and Farah can also click on her mouse and she can move. Now she
Abraham.
can and the only thing is try to make sure
Yaakov.
choose just, and I'm going to take control back, so don't move your mouse until I tell you I have it back. Okay, so I took control back. I would just
And I noticed there was a place where you can request access to the remote control.
Oh yes, there is. And so if you wanted a turn, you could click on that, and then a notification window comes up for me that says that you've requested that, and I could decide to give it to you or not give it to you. But what I was going to say is, if you do give someone control of your screen, my recommendation is that when you're sharing screens, you share just that application. You could share your entire desktop or just an application. And if you share your whole desktop, they could accidentally click on your email or something else that you don't really want to share with everybody. But if they're just sharing that one application, it's hard for them to get into trouble. So I'm going to stop sharing this now for a moment, and I'm going to take a quick look at my agenda and see anything else that we have. So the other thing I was hoping we could do today was going over the logistics of synchronous learning. We're basically out of time. You know most of it, just participating in this class. But one of the key things that you don't know because you're not the administrator is that there are a couple features that are different in Zoom for me than for you. That's where sending you that link for the Zoom video tutorials is going to be important. Not that you have to review them all, but what I'm hoping you could do for homework this week, and if it's not feasible this week, then over the next couple weeks, that's fine. Let me know if it's going to take you longer than a week. But I'd like us to partner up and develop 5 or 10 minutes of a lesson and teach it to each other so that you can practice being the administrator with Zoom, practice juggling between teaching and using the tools and paying attention to the chat and paying attention to people raising their hands, all that kind of stuff. So the real goal is to get you acclimated with being an administrator using Zoom, and also to give you a little bit of teaching experience online and to get you useful feedback from your peers. So even if the lesson itself is only okay, that's fine. So does anyone feel comfortable with working on that this week and maybe even meeting with somebody over the next 7 days?
Yeah, that sounds good.
For me,
Our
this
school
week
is
is
starting this week.
for me this week is almost done. I mean, this is Thursday. Tomorrow is Shabbat.
Sorry. When I say this week, I mean between today and next time we meet.
Okay.
My
When do we
week is
meet
a little
next
different than yours.
Thursday? We meet next Thursday, right?
Yes.
Very nice. I'm feeling really overwhelmed with all of the homework right now. Like 30 lessons and like creating the entire syllabus and also trying to figure out how to do all of that.
Oh, I'm really glad you brought that up because the first few weeks we've had a lot of bumps and you haven't even been able to submit your homework in the normal way. So don't worry about any assignments past. I mean, you will have to do them eventually, but we have a whole year, before this class is over. So especially if you're not teaching right now, a lot of that.
I'm not teaching online right now.
Not teaching online right now. A lot of that was placed where it was specifically because there might be participants who are teaching right now, and you got to have that done if you're going to be teaching, starting this week. But since you're not, don't worry, we'll get through that. But when I would do my 30 lessons or whatever, I mean, and it doesn't have to be 30, it's however many weeks you have in your school year. Just even a bullet of saying like, this week we're covering Abraham, next week we're covering Isaac, next week Jacob, identifying the few takeaways that I want them to have, realizing Abraham is our forefather, that, that he started Judaism, that the story, I want them to be familiar with the story with the Psalim, when he destroyed the Psalim. Whatever it is that is important to me to cover that day, it's just like little bullets, just making sure I know where we are, so that if we're getting behind or ahead, I realize it, and it's not May, and I'm like, wow, I've got 3 months of content to cover. If it's the Tefillot, these 2 weeks we're covering Avot V'Imahot, and these 2 weeks we're covering something else, the Shema, so realizing that you've got those days attributed to those prayers is really all you need to have right now. And if you could come up with a few objectives that you would have for that class, so being able to read fluidly would be one of your outcomes over the course of the whole semester. But if they're just learning the alphabet right now, they're not going to be reading fluidly right now. So what do they need to know today? Today they need to know Mem and Shin. And then next week they need to know these couple letters. And if you are using books like Berman House books, a lot of times it's so easy. It's like, what are they covering in chapter 1? That's what we're covering in week 1, But what I want you to do over the next few weeks is to take that very basic plan, which is easy to put together, hopefully, and not too complicated to organize, and then look more specifically and deeply into it and identify, what am I really trying to get out of my students this week? Okay, we're learning mem and shin, but what are the outcomes of this class as a whole? And what are we doing to get towards those outcomes? Because if you're really clear on that, then it's also really clear for you whether or not the kids are hitting the mark or missing the mark, if you need to adjust your schedule, because, man, they're just not getting A versus Faye. They're just not getting that dot. And that's a big deal, because that dot's going to show up with bet, and it's going to show up with other letters, So it really helps you see where you are and where you're going. So for now, don't even worry about having that 30-week thing. Worry about what we're doing this week, and if you could get things going this week. And then when we have time, maybe next month when there's a big break between sessions, then we can start going back and getting some of that other stuff done. The only thing I really want you to do now, if you haven't done it, are the journals, the reflections, because I think remembering what it's like to be a brand new student is really critical. And I think your perceptions will change in a couple weeks. So let's get it while it's fresh. And then everything else could wait if needed. I hope that relieves you a little bit.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Any other questions before we go?
Stephanie, in terms of doing these model lessons, I mean, I'm hoping to launch with some students right after the Chagim, so I'm very excited that to this idea. But I'm assuming most of us work full time, or beyond full time. So maybe if there's I don't know if it's the blog or if there's a sharing space. I'm used to using wikis for us to put when we're available. I know I can't possibly even think of creating a lesson until Monday. And as it happens, I have no meetings Tuesday nights, but it would mean someone else would meet at the same time. So for us to be able to put up when we're available to try and find a partner to do this over the next week or two.
And actually, so I'm glad you brought that up, because I meant to bring that up myself. I usually use a tool called Doodle to schedule things. But we might also, instead, we might want to use Google apps, like a Google spreadsheet, just with different times, and then you can put your name, where you're available. Does anyone have a preference?
The Google spreadsheet sounds great. Is that something you can set up and send us?
Yeah. Okay. So if you're all comfortable with Google.
Mhm.
I don't really
There's
know.
yet another place for us to check things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What I'm gonna do though is I could set it up, and then not that it's another place for you to check things, but I'll put the link right into Moodle. So everything will eventually be in Moodle. It might send you off somewhere else, but Moodle's where we're gonna start. And so I'll just make a spreadsheet. You click on the link, just put your name, where you're available, and then you could, and I'll put a place for your email and phone number, so you could put that in there, and then I'll remind you when everyone's submitted to check and see who's at the same time as you, and then you could work out, from there. So,
So we should use. So we need to set up our own Zoom account to do this?
So, no, actually, it would be good if you did, but you could use this account. So once I'm aware of when you're going to meet, I could set up the meeting times for you. If you want to create your own Zoom account, I think that's a great idea. We're going to cover that eventually. Then I mean, that's just one step towards getting you ready for doing this yourselves.
Okay.
And you said it's free, right, Stephanie?
It's free if you have a meeting that's 40 minutes or less with 25 people or less. So what I'll do is I'll have the information for you in Moodle. You could decide whether or not you want to create your own Zoom account or you want to use ours. And then once you fill out the spreadsheet and I see that people have other people they could work with, I'll let you know to check who you're partnering with. And then and you'll have each other's email and phone numbers, so you could get in touch with each other. Actually, maybe just email. I don't think I have your phone numbers. You could put your phone numbers in. I'll put a little spot and then you just add it in there yourself. And then, so if you're available for this week, great. if it can't be till next week, that'll be on the spreadsheet. And like I said, everything will be in one place. So that's where you'll have to check. And if you have any questions, don't be afraid to call or email or whatever is easiest. Okay?
Thank you.
Sounds good.
You're welcome. Take care. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Good night.
Stephanie.
You're
Stephanie,
welcome.
just as an aside, I was wondering if you're able to see my blogs. Maybe you could share your screen and just go in. I can still see them, so thank goodness they weren't lost.
I didn't see where you even make it.
So for those of you who want to stay, by all means you could stay. You don't have to stay because we're over time already. But I'm going to share my screen and see if we could figure some of this.
By blogs, do you mean the journal reflections?
Well, so that was probably the assignment that was being requested. But that might not have been where Gary put it. So my hope was, Gary, that you were going to put like your journal reflections here by clicking.
Well,
that.
I'll transfer them and copy and paste them, but I'm just wondering if you can even see the blogs.
Well, let's see. That would be under participants,
Course blogs. And then where would mine be? Do you have to select me? Or because
well,
I can see mine. Maybe you go into that.
so my caveat
I see.
is that I've never actually used Moodle before. I've created a course shell in Moodle, and I've used other learning management systems,
So
but
where under here are the blogs?
well, that's why I'm telling you my caveat, because I don't know. I've not used the blog before. I've only
Can
used
Gary,
blogs
can Gary
and
share
forms.
his screen and show us what he's seeing?
Yeah, I could if Stephanie permitted me.
Yeah, so this is not what you're referring to.
No, that's not my blog.
Okay.
Would it be called log? No, I don't think it's log. It
No.
was called blog on my screen.
Yeah, it's not log. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and you could share yours.
Okay, and let's see. I'm going to share screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I would need to log in again to to Moodle. And you have
Log into your Moodle account.
Which is jteach.learnjewishly.com.
This is it. Okay, and then it says I'm not logged in, so I have to log in.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so now there's the dashboard and the site pages. Okay, and then site blogs. I think. Okay, so for example, these are the categories and blogs that I've been entering, but obviously other people can't see it.
Well, it's not that they can't
Just for myself, because when I post, I say, you see where it says on the right-hand side, anyone on this site can
Now,
see?
Gary, when I go in there, I can see your posts.
And I
You
can.
can.
I just
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Okay, but I think I'm going to have to copy and paste these to the reflections of the journal, that type of thing.
Are the reflections private that only Stephanie can see them?
Yeah.
As opposed to this blog where anyone can see it?
Right. Yeah. So
Blog is general talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but your assignments have to go under the assignment sections.
Yeah, and mainly because when an assignment is submitted, I get a notification and there's a specific place I go. And then once I have the rubrics made, I'll be able to grade them very easily. Whereas if it's in the wrong place, then I won't, I have to override and say, no, really, he did do his homework. I promise.
Well, this is really in the wrong place then.
Yeah, it is. But thank you for doing it. Don't worry about moving it right away. Like, don't feel time pressured to do that. Do it when you have a moment. But it's totally fine if you don't do it, even in the next week or so.
Okay.
There's plenty of folks have things that they have to get done still, and it's primarily because this whole thing wasn't really set up before this class started. So, I'm going to be really flexible on timelines for our assignments, especially because we've got such a great group of folks who are so committed to doing really well with this, that it's really no problem with deadlines. Deadlines are more important when you have folks who are like, kind of need the deadlines in order to get going. And the one other area where deadlines are helpful is with the discussions, to make sure that people are getting their feedback and things in a timely fashion. But again, what we've started with is just fine where we are. I'm going
I have one more question. We're talking about a whole variety of technological tools, and I run across that in software all the time, and it causes a lot of complications. I prefer tools that are more integrated than in the real world. I'm dealing with multiple tools, but can't there be an extension to Moodle or something where you've got your video, you've got your classroom desk on the side-by-side with the video, and if students are writing things, if they're painting things, if they're doing whatever, all of this is being collected in the site automatically, week by week, day by day. They can review what they've done, and the teacher can review, even without the sense of having to go through the aggravation of submitting it or changing tools or doing this and that. Wouldn't that make sense? Wouldn't that be making the technology easier?
Maybe you should invent it. There are some technologies that do integrate things more cohesively than what we have here, but you pay a premium for it, and most synagogues don't have the funds. Like, for example, Blackboard has its own video conferencing thing called Blackboard Collaborate, which does integrate really well with the Blackboard learning management system. But Blackboard is also, it costs multi-millions of dollars for where I used to work every single year just to have it.
Oh my goodness.
Moodle, like I said, costs a lot because of the people that you need to administer it, but Moodle itself is free. So Zoom itself can be free if you're using it for 40 minutes or less. So it's a matter of having the resources that are realistic to our audiences. So.
And a question about Moodle. I'm finding it very difficult to see where to submit the reflections. It seems like if I click on the current course, BJE-OHEL, on the right, it says upcoming events. And before it was just it's 5 journal reflections and 4 journal reflections. And that's been really confusing because this is our 3rd week, right? Mm-hmm. But it says 4-period journal reflections and 5-period journal reflections for the upcoming events. So I couldn't figure out where to submit it for week 3.
So yes, so this theoretically, I would have deadlines associated with these actual dates, so that you can go to your calendar and you can see, oh, what do I have coming up here? I've got, but because number one, I just tried throwing everything into this course shell as fast as I could to get ready for this week. I wasn't particular about the deadlines that were put in. Moreover, I'm not keeping you to many of these deadlines, so that is a little confusing. I apologize for that. But normally you would be looking at this, and this would be telling you about upcoming due dates, and these would be accurate to when they're actually due. These numbers are maybe not a great solution, but I was just trying to associate them here. So this is the first thing on the homework list, and this is the link associated with that assignment. Here's the second assignment, and then this is the link that you would use to get to that second assignment. But I think I might do it a little differently.
Or maybe do 4 journal reflections - week 3.
So I could do that. I'm hoping though so this is under week 1. I'm hoping that makes it clear enough. But if we find that it's not clear enough to have it like that, then yeah, sure, I could put W1 for week 1 or W2 for week 2 to make sure that you know which is which.
Oh, okay. But so we have to go into each week to be able to get to the homework for that week. There isn't a separate listing participants, badges, OHEL, pre-course materials, homework.
But when you hit dashboard and then you hit on the online Hebrew thing, everything shows up in the center column, including links to the homework by week.
So
right, but the name of the homework is,
Yeah.
I'm like counting weeks, thinking that was our reflections for week 5.
So that's part of the confusing part that just comes with me trying to do this really quickly. One negative is that because I use Blackboard and I've not used Moodle before, there are certain features that either they don't have or I just haven't found it yet. For example, with Blackboard, I often like to put on the left-hand column.
It's labeled 5 because it's the 5th thing on the homework assignment for that week.
Right.
Not that it's week 5.
Right, which is clear here, but not clear when you're looking over on the side. So, I could definitely, all of that feedback is really helpful because, I want to make this as user-friendly for you as possible. And if that's not user-friendly, then that's something I definitely want to change, if not for this course, then for next year. And then the other thing too, so like if you think it's helpful to say W1 in front or W2 in front or at the end, then that's perfectly fine. But what I would like to add, if I could figure it out, is a link to this navigation on the side that says just discussion. And then if you had to participate in discussion, you could go straight there and find all the discussion forums. It's a pretty easy feature in Blackboard, but I haven't found it yet in Moodle, but I'll keep looking. So, the journals, the discussion, those kinds of things, I'd love if they were right here for like a quick link, and then it shows you all the discussions, each week's discussion. So until I find that, unfortunately, this is sort of the organization that we have. Is there anything else that would be helpful to you to make this more clear as we move forward?
I think it's a good start.
Okay. Well, thank you. If you come up with anything, let me know. One thing I did, and you could tell me that you don't like this or you do like this, is you notice like here, there's a little explanation for this presentation because I don't expect you to go through these later slides, at least not yet. All of these have content like this, but I didn't put them all like right here on the page because I didn't want the page to be forever long. What I normally do with Blackboard anyway is there would be a folder, and this would be on the outside of the folder. And then when you click into the folder, then that's where you see all these links, so that every week is just a small little section there. It's not taking up a whole page. But then when you want to do the stuff for that week, then you click into it and then you find all the detail. And that could be a page or longer to put all the detail for all these different items. Do you think, would that be helpful to you, or do you like it having everything on one page like this?
Well, Blackboard is really sophisticated. I mean, and you're not going to be able to do that. This works.
Okay. Well, I mean, I could use folders. I could do that.
The number of classes that you have scheduled is would work easily with folders, and it would work without folders. But if you had a normal school year with the number of normal days and weeks in the school year, and you were teaching each of those, folders would be an absolute necessity.
Yeah, it can get too long otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to go straight to the week that you want to look at.
Okay. Well, I will definitely play around with those things. And
Okay, so in going back and submitting the homework, I submit the homework that's due before class 2 in class 1 because it's the homework from class 1, or it's, whereas I just did my homework that was given in class 1 under class 2 because it was for class 2. But then when I went to submit my thing for class 3, it's not there yet.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a good point. I should put the due date for all of these things at the top right here, so it's really obvious. So yeah, all of these things should have been done between, we had our first class, and they should have been done before our second class, sometime in that first week, that for Thursday to Thursday. And then this
Yeah,
week,
and I think when you have a name of an assignment that's the same week to week, like journal reflections, it should say week 1 journal reflections, and it doesn't matter what number.
But it's reflections after the fact, like reflections on week 1, due for
Right.
week 2. Like it would really be helpful, I feel like, if homework was separate from under these weeks, like just like because I think of homework as being when it's due, not when it's assigned.
Okay. Well, yeah, that was the one. Everything is due the following week except for, like, there's 1 or 2 exceptions, but that's enough.
So I want to submit it for when it's due.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's not really a way for me to make a folder that's just homework that I'm aware of, but what I could do, like I said, I could create a folder at the bottom, let's say, of week 1 that says homework due on such and such date. And then you click into that folder, and then that's where you get all these links. Would that be helpful, do you think?
I think it would be helpful if we place the homework wherever the homework description of the assignment was. I mean, if I see an assignment, no matter what week it's in, and whether it's before or afterwards, even if I'm making it up 2 weeks late, I think that I should put it where the assignment is made. So you see the assignment and then you see the result. To me, it doesn't make sense to submit.
Him and I are
And
thinking
Stephanie,
opposite.
in Blackboard, doesn't it have, this is the homework that goes along with the lesson from week 1? Not that it's due by week 1.
Yeah, I haven't used Blackboard.
These are the
since
homework
2010.
assignments connected to the lesson.
Right. Well, and that's part of it, is there are some folks that are familiar with how these things work, and so they have certain expectations of where to find information. And then there are people who aren't, and then they're coming with, I would say, a fresher perspective, so to speak, because they're really thinking like logically and not how we were trained once we became acclimated to these systems. Like some of this is because somebody else decided, I don't know the best way to put these things up, so I'll put this over here and let's see if people complain. Okay, they don't like it there, we'll put it over here.
Whereas I'm thinking of it from how I do things in life, and it's like when I have homework and I write the due date down in my planner. I hand it in to my teacher on the day it's due. I don't hand it in to my teacher on the day it's assigned. So I don't write it down. I might write it down the day it's assigned, but I really write it down on when I'm going to work on it and when it's due, because I don't look backwards in my planner. I look forwards.
So what will help you, and I could make this more obvious, and what I usually would try to do with Blackboard or with any course, once I'm really familiar with the tool, like I said, I like to have things organized by week or by class, with very specific topics so that you know what you covered that week. But at the same time, I like to have folders that say discussion, assignments, quizzes, whatever general topic area, because there are some people who just feel more comfortable with that. And for some classes, every week you're going to have a discussion and you're going to have a quiz and you're going to have, so to go into each folder. But for Farah, maybe for you, it would be helpful if I really make use of the due dates so that you could look on this calendar and you could see, okay, this is what I have to do for that day or for a different day. So I'll put the accurate due dates in, even though I'm not expecting all of you to meet those due dates, especially for the things that have already passed. Would that be helpful?
Yes, it would also be awesome if, say to have, for when the time the homework's assigned, to have the place to submit it. Because right now, everything's really fresh that I could, as soon as we sign off, stop for 5 minutes and write my reflection. But then I have to, there's nowhere for me to submit it right now.
And that was purely because I couldn't get it done in time. But the goal is to...
Sure.
The goal is to have, at least for the week upcoming. So I don't like to have every week available. I don't like to have all 10 weeks up from day 1 because that's a bit overwhelming and you're not supposed to be looking at week 8 right now anyway. But what I do like to have is I like to have all the weeks. So I would like to have had all of this done for you before this class. And midweek this week, when you're already, some of you will be done with this homework, or at least mostly done with this homework, I like to put up the following week so that you could know what you're anticipating. So let's say on the Monday before Thursday, you would be able to check and see what's on the agenda for week 4 and what's going to be the homework. So that's the plan. And because I know you would really like it, I will build that reflection journal right now once we hang up.
Yay! Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Sure, it's my pleasure. And really, this is a learning experience for me as well, because I've always been teaching courses like this in systems that have been previously developed. I haven't had to build a Moodle course before. So there are things that I know I should be doing and just don't know how to do it yet. And then there are other things where it's like you take it for granted because you didn't have to do it. You didn't have to build it, so you didn't even realize how important it was. So if you notice anything, I'm really appreciative if you let me know that this is working or this is not working, because it's going to really help with this class as we move forward and then future classes.
This is good.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Good night.
Thanks so much. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.